The thing about Ryan was that he never committed to anything scary. Horror movies were out. Roller coasters were out. Even choosing colleges stressed him out because it meant closing doors, making something real and final. His therapist called it decision paralysis. I called it self-preservation. When your dad walks out and your mom stops getting out of bed, you learn that some questions are better left unasked. I understood that. Ryan's mom had the kind of depression that kept the curtains drawn for weeks at a time. His dad left when Ryan was 11, and the last thing the guy said before walking out was that Ryan needed to man up and help your mother. So Ryan learned to be quiet, to fade into the background of rooms, to make himself small enough that his presence wouldn't be another burden for anyone to carry. Casey was the opposite. She took up space like she'd been told her whole life she deserved to. Student council, debate team, Instagram aesthetics so carefully curated it looked effortless. Her parents were the kind of people who showed up to every event with professional cameras, who had her entire academic future mapped out on a literal poster board in their home office. Yale, then law school, then partnership in her father's firm. The thing was, Casey actually wanted none of that. She told me once, sophomore year, that she wished she could just work in a plant nursery, spend her days with her hands in dirt, helping things grow. But she'd said it like it was a joke, like the idea of disappointing her parents was so unthinkable, it could only exist as fantasy. And Luke. Luke was more complicated than I wanted him to be. He was tall, yeah. Played varsity football. Had the kind of easy confidence that came from never being told he couldn't do something. But here's the thing nobody else seemed to notice. Luke's dad hit him. Not often enough to leave marks that lasted, but enough. I'd seen Luke flinch once, when Ryan clapped him on the shoulder too suddenly. Seen the way he stood sometimes, favoring his left side like his ribs were sore. He never talked about it, and I never asked, but it was there between us like smoke. That's why he cheated on Casey, probably. Self-sabotage as a kind of protection. If you ruin it first, nobody can take it from you. I understood the logic, even if I hated what it did to her. Even if watching her take him back felt like watching someone walk into traffic. Me? I was just trying to get through high school without my own damage becoming everyone else's problem. The folklore started on a Reddit thread. Someone's uncle's coworker knew a guy who'd gone into the woods behind County Memorial and come back wrong. Different. Kept talking about prices and payments and how everything cost something. 3 weeks later, he drove his truck into the lake with his whole family inside. It's bullshit, Ryan had said when Casey first brought it up, but his fingers were already drumming that nervous pattern on his knee. The one that meant he was thinking about it too hard, letting it get under his skin. Probably, Casey said. She was scrolling through satellite images of the hospital on her phone, zooming in on the forest that pressed against its southern edge. But wouldn't it be cool to check out? Just the hospital, I mean. Urban exploration. The hospital had been abandoned since 2003. County Memorial, built in the 40s, shut down after some Medicare fraud thing bankrupted the board. 6 stories of brick and broken windows, wrapped in chain link and covered in the kind of graffiti that suggested people came here specifically to be forgotten. The forest beyond it was old-growth pine, dense enough that hikers got lost every few years. Search parties, helicopters, the whole production. Sometimes they found the bodies. We were standing by Casey's locker between 3rd and 4th period when she pitched the idea. Ryan looked like he wanted to crawl into the ventilation system. I was trying to figure out how to say no without sounding as scared as I felt when Luke appeared. He had this way of moving through crowds like they were designed to part for him. People just stepped aside. He came up behind Casey and wrapped his arms around her waist, lifting her off her feet. She shrieked, kicking her legs, laughing in that way that made my stomach hurt. "What are we talking about?" Luke asked, setting her down. Casey turned in his arms, already grinning. "The hospital. The one with the woods out back. We're thinking of exploring it." "Sounds boring," Luke said, but he was looking at me when he said it, one eyebrow raised. "Unless you're afraid." There it was. The hook. Luke knew exactly what he was doing. He'd been doing it since middle school. This casual needling that made saying no feel like admitting weakness. It was manipulative and obvious, and it worked anyway because I was 17 and stupid. "Tonight," I said. 7 o'clock. Luke smiled. Ryan looked like he might throw up. I told my parents I was sleeping at Ryan's. They barely looked up from their respective screens. My dad worked in insurance. My mom taught elementary school. and both of them seemed relieved I had friends to occupy my time. Teenagers were a mystery they decided not to solve. I climbed out my bedroom window at 6:30, dropping into the backyard with an impact that made my ankles ache. My bike was old, inherited from a cousin, and the chain made a clicking sound that seemed too loud in the quiet suburban evening. I texted Ryan that I was heading out. He sent back a thumbs up, and nothing else. The hospital was 4 miles away, past the nice part of town, and into the part where houses had bars on the windows. The sun was setting, turning the sky the color of a bruise. By the time I reached the parking lot, full dark had fallen. The place looked worse than the photos suggested. The fog was real, thick enough that it pooled in low spots like something liquid. The hospital loomed beyond it, all those shattered windows like eye sockets in a skull. Someone had painted "Memento Mori" across the main entrance in dripping red letters. My breath came out in clouds. October in New England, the kind of cold that got into your bones and stayed there. I tried Ryan's phone. It went straight to voicemail. Casey's rang 4 times and went to her cheerful recording. I took a photo. Posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Bad decisions loading," and watched it get 3 likes before I'd even pocketed my phone. Headlights swept across the lot. Luke's Camaro, black and impractical, his dad's cast-off. The engine ticked as it cooled. Luke climbed out first. Casey from the passenger side. She was wearing his Letterman jacket over her hoodie, drowning in it. "Jesus," Luke said, breath fogging. "It's freezing. Remind me why we're doing this." "Adventure," Casey said, but she'd lost some of that enthusiasm from earlier. She looked small in the empty parking lot, younger than usual. "Ryan's not here yet," I said. Luke snorted. Probably chickened out. Then we heard the bike. Ryan came pedaling into the lot like he was being chased, skidding to a stop next to mine. His helmet was crooked. His face flushed red from cold and exertion. "Where the hell were you?" I asked. I called. "Got lost," Ryan panted. "No signal out here." Everything looks the same in the dark. Casey was staring at the hospital now, really looking at it. "Maybe this is stupid," she said quietly. "Maybe we should just go home." "We drove all the way out here," Luke said. He was already walking toward the building, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "Come on." We followed the fence line around to the back. Up close, the hospital felt worse. Bigger. More present. Like it was aware of us. In some fundamental way. The windows on the ground floor were boarded over, but higher up they gaped open, and I kept expecting to see movement in them. A face. A hand. Ryan was breathing too fast, that panicky rhythm that meant he was spiraling. I'd seen it before, usually during tests, or when his mom called during school. The forest pressed against the fence, trees so dense they looked solid. Pine and oak, and something that made the air smell like decay. We found a spot where someone had cut the chain link and peeled it back like the lid on a can. "So we're really doing this?" Casey asked. Nobody answered. Luke went first, ducking through. Then Casey. Then me and Ryan, who looked like he was walking to his execution. The forest was colder. That shouldn't have been possible, but it was. Our phone lights made narrow tunnels in the dark, catching on bark and exposed roots, and something that might have been animal bones. We walked single file, nobody speaking. There was no path, just trees and darkness and the sound of our breathing. 5 minutes in, Luke stopped. "This is stupid," he said. "There's nothing here. Let's go back, check out the hospital instead." "Yeah," Casey said quickly. "The hospital. Better idea." We turned around. That's when something moved in the trees behind us. Heavy. Deliberate. The sound of something large displacing air. Casey backed into Luke, grabbing his arm. Ryan had gone statue still, and when I looked at him, his face had lost all color. "Animal," Luke said, but his voice was wrong. Too high. The thing moved again, closer. And with it came a sound like wind chimes made of bone, a clicking rattle that made my teeth ache. It stepped into the light. I want to tell you I processed what I was seeing, that my brain took in the details and categorized them in any useful way. But that's not what happened. What happened was, my mind just stopped. like a computer program hitting a fatal error. 7 feet tall, maybe more. A shape that suggested a body but refused to confirm one. Draped in moss and forest rot. Organic material that might have been fabric or flesh or something in between. And the head. God. A deer skull, bleached white, antlers spreading like broken fingers. Around its neck, strung on what looked like sinew, hung dozens of teeth. Human teeth? Maybe? Or animal. The distinction seemed less important than the fact of their existence. It had no eyes, but I felt it looking at us. Looking into us. Luke made a sound I'd never heard him make before. Something between a sob and a laugh. The thing's jaw opened. Not like a jaw should, but hinging wrong. Too wide. And when it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere. From inside my skull and from the ground and from the air itself. You come to wish. The words scraped like rusted metal dragging across bone. All of you must wish. Casey was crying. I could hear it. Small hitching sobs behind me. But I couldn't turn to look at her. Couldn't stop staring at the creature, at the way it seemed to shift and settle like it wasn't quite solid, wasn't quite real. The skull twitched toward Ryan. Ryan opened his mouth, closed it. His hands were shaking so badly I could see it even in the bad light. Wish, the creature said, and its voice got louder, resonant, shaking the trees. Wish now. I wish, Ryan started, then stopped. His voice was barely a whisper. I wish to know if God is real. I don't know what I expected. Maybe nothing. Maybe for the thing to laugh or vanish or tell us we were all idiots playing with urban legends. But that's not what happened. The creature convulsed. Its body, that shapeless mass, began twitching violently, and the deer skull lurched sideways at an angle that made my stomach turn. The bone necklace rattled in the opposite direction, spinning, and the sound it made was like grinding vertebrae. Ryan screamed. Not a shout or a yell. A scream. The kind that carries agony and terror in equal measure, that sounds like someone being unmade at the molecular level. His hands shot to his head, fingers clawing at his skull, and then I saw it happen. His head was collapsing inward. The bones of his skull were folding like paper, caving in on themselves, and his face, Ryan's face, the one I'd known since we were 12, was disappearing into the void it left behind. The skin went slack and then concave, and the scream cut off into something wet and horrible, and then into nothing at all. He hit the ground. Casey's scream replaced his, raw and primal. Luke grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. Run, he said. We ran. I crashed through a low-hanging branch that whipped across my face, bark scraping my cheek raw. My phone was in my hand, light jerking wildly, turning the forest into a strobe nightmare of trees and shadows and nothing that made sense. Behind us, I could hear it. That rattling. Bone on bone, getting closer. Casey was sobbing as she ran. These gasping, hitching breaths between footfalls. Luke was ahead of her, pulling her by the wrist, and I was behind them both. And I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan, about the way his face had just collapsed, folded in on itself like wet cardboard. My foot caught on a root, and I went down hard, phone flying from my hand. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. I scrabbled in the dirt, fingers finding leaves and moss, and something that felt horribly like bone before my hand closed around the phone. The light was facing back the way we'd come. The creature was there. Not far, maybe 20 feet. Moving through the trees with that horrible fluid motion, branches bending around it like they were afraid to touch it. The deer skull was angled toward me, antlers scraping bark, and the bone necklace swayed and clattered with each movement. I could see details now that I hadn't before. The way the moss covering its body seemed to grow and shift, pulsing like something alive. The teeth on the necklace weren't all the same size. Some were small, child-sized. Others were long and pointed, predator teeth. And there were other things strung between them. Small bones, finger bones maybe, and something that looked horrifyingly like a dried human ear. Get up, Luke's voice somewhere ahead in the darkness. I rolled onto my hands and knees, pushed myself up. My ankle screamed in protest but held. I ran. The forest had become a maze. Every tree looked the same. Every shadow held something terrible. My lungs burned. The cold air felt like breathing broken glass. I could hear Luke and Casey ahead, crashing through undergrowth, and I pushed harder, trying to catch up. Behind me, that rattling never stopped. It stayed constant, rhythmic, like the creature was pacing itself. Like it knew it didn't need to rush. Like this was all part of something it had done 1,000 times before. My phone light caught Casey's jacket ahead, that bright red. I focused on it, used it as a beacon. We were running uphill now, the ground getting steeper, roots reaching across the path like fingers trying to trip us. My thighs burned. My ankle throbbed with each impact. Then Casey went down. She cried out, a sharp yelp of pain, and Luke skidded to a stop. I nearly crashed into him. Casey was on the ground, clutching her leg, her phone a few feet away casting crazy shadows across her face. I can't, she gasped. My ankle, I can't. Luke looked back. Even in the bad light, I could see his face. The calculation happening there. The math of who lives and who dies. Help me get her up, I said, moving to Casey's other side. We each took an arm, hauled her to her feet. She whimpered, tried to put weight on her right leg, and nearly collapsed again. Luke and I locked our arms behind her back, made a kind of chair. She looped her arms around our necks. We moved slower now, so much slower. Casey's weight between us, her breathing ragged in my ear. The creature's rattling got louder. Closer. I could feel its presence like a pressure change, like the air itself was being displaced by something too large, too wrong. There, Luke panted. I see the fence. And there it was, chain link glinting in our phone lights, and beyond it, the dark mass of the hospital. We were coming at it from an angle, not the way we'd entered. This section of fence was intact, but there was a spot maybe 10 yards down where it had been peeled back. We staggered toward it, Casey's weight making every step feel like we were wading through concrete. 5 yards. 3. Behind us, branches cracked. Not the small pops of twigs breaking, the deep groan of something large pushing through resistance. I risked a look back. The creature had closed the distance. It was right there, maybe 15 feet away, and in the better light near the fence line I could see it clearly for the first time. It wasn't wearing the moss and rot. That was its skin. Bark and organic material fused together into something that might have once been alive, but had evolved past that into something else. The deer skull was partially embedded in its body, grown into it, and where the skull ended and the body began was impossible to determine. The antlers weren't antlers at all. They were bones. Almond bones, femurs and radius and ulna, all twisted and fused together into that branching structure. And the worst part, the part that made my bladder almost let go, was that the skull was moving. Not the creature's head, but the skull itself. The jaw was opening and closing in a rhythm that matched the rattling of the bone necklace, and I could see something behind the bone, something dark and writhing, like the inside of the skull was full of worms or maggots or things that squirmed. Go, 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 I screamed. We hit the fence line. Luke dropped Casey's arm, grabbed the peeled back section and hauled it up. The metal shrieked. Casey went under first, on her hands and knees crawling. I was right behind her. And behind me I could hear the creature moving faster now. Could hear that rattling building to a crescendo. I was halfway under when I felt something grab my jacket. Not a hand. Nothing as simple as a hand. Something that felt like it had too many points of contact, like it was gripping me in 6 places at once. The fabric pulled taut, yanking me backward, and I screamed. Casey was on the other side, reaching back through, grabbing my arms. Luke was there too, pulling. I was caught between them. The fence cutting into my back. The creature's grip tightening. I could smell it now. Rot and earth, and something sweet underneath, like decomposition. Like meat going bad in the Sunday. My jacket tore. The sound was loud, that ripping canvas noise, and suddenly I was sliding forward, under the fence, Luke and Casey falling backward with me on top. We landed in a heap on the asphalt. I rolled, looked back. The creature was pressed against the fence, not trying to climb it or break through. Just standing there, that deer skull tilted, watching us. The bone necklace had gone still. In the parking lot lights, I could see my jacket, or what was left of it, hanging from one of the fence posts. It was shredded, not cut. Shredded. Like something with claws had grabbed it. But the creature had no hands. Come on, Luke said, already pulling Casey to her feet. The hospital. We get inside, we're safe. I didn't know what made him think that. Didn't know what made him think we'd be safe anywhere. But the alternative was standing here in the parking lot while that thing watched us, so I got up and ran. The hospital entrance gaped open. Someone had torn the boards off years ago. Inside was darkness, deeper than the forest. And that smell. Mold, and decay, and stale air that hadn't moved in decades. Our phones lit the way, catching on debris. A wheelchair, rusted, one wheel missing. Medical charts scattered across the floor. Patient names still visible. An IV stand lying on its side. We moved into the lobby, a wide-open space with a reception desk that had been stripped of anything valuable. The floor was tile, broken in places, and our footsteps echoed wrong, too loud, like the building was paying attention. "We can't stay here," Casey said. She was limping badly, putting almost no weight on her right leg. "It'll come in. It'll find us. Then we go up," Luke said, gesturing to a stairwell on the far side of the lobby. "Get to the second floor. Find a room we can barricade. Or we go straight through," I said, pointing to a hallway that led deeper into the building. "Find the other side, get back to the parking lot, get to the car." Luke looked at Casey, then at me. I saw the decision forming, saw the exact moment he chose. "Through is faster," he said, already moving toward the hallway. We followed. Casey between us again, hobbling, trying to keep up. The hallway was narrower than the lobby, doors lining both sides. Most were closed. Some hung open, revealing rooms full of stripped beds and broken equipment. Our phone lights made everything worse, turning shadows into threats, making every corner a potential ambush. We passed a nurse's station. The desk was overturned, papers everywhere, and something had made a nest in the corner. I couldn't tell what. Blankets and trash and something else. Something organic that I didn't want to look at too closely. Then we heard it behind us. That rattling. Inside the building now. In the lobby. The sound echoed off the walls, distorted, making it impossible to tell exactly where it was coming from. But it was close. Getting closer. "Faster," Luke hissed. Casey was crying again, quiet sobs that she was trying to muffle. We were moving as fast as we could, but her ankle was bad, really bad, and each step was agony for her. I could feel it in the way she gripped my shoulder, nails digging in through my shirt. The hallway branched. Luke took the left corridor without hesitating. We followed. This hallway was darker somehow, fewer windows, and the air felt thicker, harder to breathe, like the building's decay had concentrated here. Behind us, the rattling got louder. I risked a look back and saw nothing but darkness and the pathetic throw of our phone lights. But I could feel it. That presence. That wrongness. "There," Luke said, pointing ahead. A door. Different from the others. Metal instead of wood, with a small window set at eye level. Emergency exit, maybe. A way out. We stumbled toward it, Casey whimpering with each step, and Luke hit it at full speed. It didn't budge. He slammed into it, bounced back, tried the handle. Locked. He threw his shoulder against it again, and the door rattled in its frame, but held. "F," he said. "F, F, F." The rattling was louder now. So loud it seemed to come from the walls themselves. I turned, putting myself between Casey and the direction we'd come, and my phone light caught movement at the end of the hallway. The creature was there. It had to hunch to fit in the corridor, that deer skull scraping the ceiling tiles. Bits of acoustic foam rained down as it moved, and the sound of its passage was wrong. Wet and grinding, like meat being forced through a space too small. "Luke," I said, and my voice was surprisingly steady. "We need to move." "The door's locked? Then we find another door?" Luke grabbed Casey's arm and pulled her away from the exit. We ran back the way we'd come, but the creature was blocking that path now. So we took the first door we came to. It opened into a patient room, and we slammed it shut behind us. The room was small. A single bed, stripped to the frame. A window with bars on it. Glass long gone, letting in cold air and the smell of the forest. A small bathroom in the corner, door hanging off one hinge. "We're trapped," Casey said. She'd given up trying to stop crying. Tears tracked down her face, catching in our phone lights. "We're trapped, and it's going to kill us." "There has to be another way out," I said, moving to the window. The bars were solid, old but not rusted enough to break. I shook them anyway. They didn't move. Behind us, in the hallway, the rattling had stopped. The silence was worse, so much worse. Because silence meant it was listening, hunting, planning. Luke was at the door, ear pressed against it, trying to hear movement. His hand was on the handle, knuckles white. "I don't hear anything," he whispered. "That doesn't mean it's not there," Casey said. We waited. Seconds that felt like hours. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat, in my temples. The cold air from the window made me shiver. Or maybe that was just fear. Probably fear. Then something scraped against the door. Not a knock. A long, drawn-out scrape, like bone on metal. The door shuddered. Luke jumped back, nearly dropping his phone. The scraping came again, lower this time, then higher. Like the thing was testing the door, learning its dimensions. The handle started to turn. Luke grabbed it, tried to hold it, but the force on the other side was immense. The handle turned despite his grip, despite him throwing his weight against it, and the door began to open. "Help me!" Luke screamed. I ran to the door, added my weight. Casey was there too, her bad ankle forgotten. All of us pressing against the door as it slowly, inexorably, opened. It was like trying to hold back a freight train, like trying to stop gravity. The door opened 6 inches, then a foot. Through the gap, I could see the hallway, and I could see the creature. It had changed. Or maybe I was just seeing it more clearly. The deer skull was at ground level now, and I realized the creature didn't have a fixed orientation. It could move in any direction, could reorient itself however it needed. The skull was sideways now, antlers scraping the door frame, and behind it, that body of moss and rot and wrong, and in the darkness behind the skull's eye sockets, I saw movement, saw things writhing. The door opened another foot. "The bathroom!" Casey screamed. "Go! Go!" We broke, all of us at once, abandoning the door and sprinting for the bathroom. It was tiny, barely enough room for the 3 of us, but we crammed inside and Luke grabbed the door. This one was lighter, flimsier, but it had a lock. He turned it just as the patient room door slammed open behind us. The creature filled the doorway. Through the crack at the bottom of the bathroom door, I could see it. Could see that mass of organic material spreading across the tile. And the shadow it cast was wrong. Too many angles. Too much depth. Then came the voice. "Wish," it said, and the word rattled through the building. Must wish. All must wish. Luke's face was white. He was backed against the sink, hands gripping the porcelain like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Casey was in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly. The door shuddered. Something hit it, heavy, and the wood cracked. "Wish," the creature said again. "You. Wish." Now. The door splintered. Wood shards exploded inward. A piece hit my arm, drawing blood. Through the hole in the door, I could see the deer skull. Could see those empty sockets looking in at us. Luke's voice came out strangled, desperate. "I wish you were dead," he said. "I wish you were fishing dead." The creature's response was immediate. The deer skull snapped back. And that rattling started again, frenzied. And Luke's hands flew to his back. He screamed. Not like Ryan. Different. This was a scream of confusion more than pain, at least at first. Then the pain came. I watched his body arch backward, watched his shirt collapse inward like something was being pulled out from underneath, and I understood. The creature was removing his spine, not all at once, bone by bone, vertebra by vertebra. I could see them going, could see the shirt fabric cave where each bone disappeared. Luke's body bent backward, farther than any body should bend, and the scream went on until his lungs couldn't support it anymore and it became a wet gurgle. Then he fell. Casey was screaming, had been screaming. I grabbed her, pulled her close, but she fought me, pushed me away. "No!" she shouted at the creature. At the deer skull watching us through the broken door. I wish none of this ever happened. I wish we never came here. And the world broke. That's the only way I can describe it. Reality fractured like glass, and through the cracks, I could see something else. Other versions of this moment. Other timelines, where we made different choices, where we didn't come. where we turned back, where Ryan said something else, all of them existing simultaneously, overlapping, bleeding into each other. The buzzing started in my skull, building and building until I thought my head would explode. The bathroom walls rippled like water. Casey was there, and then not there, and then there again, flickering like a broken film strip. The creature's rattling became a roar, became everything, became the only sound in existence. He fell, or flew, or both. Time inverted, collapsed, expanded. I saw Ryan's face caving in again but backward, saw it inflate like a balloon. Saw Luke's spine returning, then disappearing again. Saw Casey running, screaming, laughing, all at the same time. Then it stopped. Complete silence. Complete stillness. I was on my back, staring up at nothing. No, not nothing. Stars. I was staring at stars. My hands were on asphalt, cold and rough. I sat up slowly, carefully, like any sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile reality had formed around me. I was in the parking lot, not near it, in it. Lying next to Luke's Camaro. The driver's side door hung open. The dome light was on, casting everything in sickly yellow. I stood. My legs shook but held. I turned slowly, taking it in. The parking lot, the hospital in the distance, the forest pressing against the fence line, and Luke's car. I knew before I looked. Somehow I knew. But I looked anyway. Luke was in the driver's seat. Slumped over the steering wheel, his body bent at an angle that was only possible because there was nothing inside to stop it bending that way. His shirt had collapsed inward, empty, and even from outside the car I could see the void where his spine should have been. I made a sound. Not quite a scream, not quite a sob. Something in between. I walked around to the passenger side on legs that didn't feel like mine. Opened the door with hands that had forgotten how to shake. Casey was there, folded in on herself like origami. Her torso compressed, caved in, her body bent over her knees in a way that revealed the complete absence of ribs. Her ribcage was gone. Removed. Taken as payment. Her head rested on the dashboard, eyes open but not seeing. Not anymore. I closed the door carefully, gently, like she might wake up if I made too much noise. Ryan's bike was still there, still propped against the light pole where he'd left it. Ryan was next to it. I couldn't look at him. Not directly. My eyes skated away from what was left of his face, from the collapsed ruin of his skull. But I saw enough. I saw the bike visible through where his head used to be. Saw the way his body looked boneless, deflated. I sat down in the parking lot, right there on the cold asphalt. And I laughed. Not because anything was funny, just because something had to come out, and laughter was what my body chose. It turned into crying pretty quickly, then back to laughing. Then I couldn't tell which one I was doing anymore. Eventually, I called 911, told them there'd been an accident at County Memorial. They asked what kind of accident, and I said, "You need to come. Please just come." The cops arrived first, then the ambulances, then more cops. They separated me from the bodies, wrapped me in a foil blanket, asked questions I couldn't answer. What happened? Where were you? What did you see? I told them the truth. All of it. The creature, the wishes, the hospital. They wrote it down with the kind of careful attention people give, the clearly insane. By morning, I was in the back of a police car. By afternoon, I was in a psychiatric ward. They were kind. That's what made it worse. Everyone so gentle, so understanding, asking me about what I'd experienced, nodding when I talked about the creature, taking careful notes. The medications came in little cups, pills that made everything feel distant and manageable. It was a psychotic break, the doctor told me after the first week. Trauma manifesting as hallucination. You survived something terrible, and your mind created a narrative to cope. I learned to agree with him, learned to say the right things, to show the right amount of progress. 3 months of good behavior, of taking the pills, of going to group therapy and pretending I believed what they believed. Then they approved an outing, a supervised trip back into the world. "We think you're ready," the doctor said. "Ready to reintegrate. I know where I'm going. I know what I'll do." The creature said we all had to wish. Ryan did. Luke did. Casey did. But I never made mine. The creature is still waiting. It has to be. Those are the rules. I'll go back to those woods. I'll find it in the darkness between the trees. And I'll say the words that have been circling in my head for 3 months. The only wish that makes sense now. Maybe it won't work. Maybe the creature is gone. Maybe the rules don't function that way. Maybe I'm just crazy after all and I'll wander those woods until I die of exposure. But I have to try. Because this, right here, breathing and walking and pretending to be alive while they're in the ground, this is the real horror. This is the real price. And tomorrow, I'm going to pay it.